Good day. This is the History of Game Development, Chapter 2. I'm Erwin E. Soriegan. So, the history of game development and origins in 1950s, 1960s, first computer games, Tennis for Two, Space War, in the 1970s, arcade, race, Pong, Pac-Man, 1980s, home consoles with Super Mario Bros. 1990s, 3D graphics, PlayStation like Final Fantasy, 2000s, online and mobile, World of Warcraft, Angry Birds, 2010s, 2020, esports, League of Legends, Beat Saber, and cloud gaming. So, in the milestones in global game development, 1972, first home console, 1978, Space Invaders, arcade golden age, and 1983, video game Crash for quality games, 1985, NES revival like Super Mario Bros. 1990s, PlayStation Plus 3D, Resident Evil, and 2010-2020, sports, race, Minecraft, and Among Us.
And today I will discuss about video games evolved from a simple experiment to a billion-dollar industry, and how technology and creativity shape in this modern game. So first we have the video game as a reality interesting history. At first, they weren't like the games we know today. Back in the 1950s, scientists were just experimenting with computer. One of the first game we called Tennis for the Two. It was super simple, just a dot bouncing back and forth between two lines on a screen. During the 1980s, game became more advanced. Companies like Nintendo create classic games such as Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda. This game introduced colorful graphics, fun sound effects, and characteristic that is still famous today. People began to see gaming not just as a hobby but as a new kind of entertainment. By the 1990s, technologies improved even more, and 3D games were created. For example, Super Mario was one of the first games that let players move around in the full 3D world. And now video games have become billion-dollar industry. We have amazing graphics that looks almost real, online multiplayer game where people from different countries can play together, and even virtual reality, which makes you feel like you're inside the game. Popular modern titles include Minecraft, Fortnite, and The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
The origins of video games. Back in 1950s and 1960s, video games were just experiments made in research labs. In 1958, a physicist named William Higginbotham made a game called Tennis for Two. It was a super basic, just two people hitting paddles back and forth on a screen, kind like of early version of Pong. Then, in 1962, some of students from MIT made a game called Space War. It was a little more exciting. Two players controlled spaceship and shot at each other. It was still pretty simple, but it was one of the first games that really felt like a video game. These early games, they were either just text on a screen or basic physics simulations because The technology back then is not very powerful, but these games were important because they helped start the whole video game in our industry or in the world.
Evaluation of video games. 1970s, birth of the arcade era upon 1972. 1970s, birth of the arcade era. The 1970s marked the beginning of video games become popular in public places like arcades. One of the first successful games was Pong 1972, a simple table tennis simulation. This decades introduced gaming as a form of entertainment. 1980s Golden Age, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, home console rise. 1980s Golden Age, known as the Golden Age of video games when arcade games become mainstream. Iconic games like Pac-Man, Donkey Kong were created. Before the 1980s, most video games were played in arcades, big machine in public places. In the 1980s, home console became popular, meaning people could play video games at home by connecting a gaming system to their TV. 1990s 3D graphics, online gaming, PlayStation, Nintendo 64. PC LAN games. 1990s 3D graphics and online gaming. 1990s gaming shifted from 2D to 3D graphics with consoles like the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 introducing realistic worlds. Super Mario 64, Final Fantasy VII. At the same time, one of the gaming grew through PC LAN games, Dawn Quick Start Craft, allowing players to connect and complete playing and foundation for modern multiple playing. 20% mobile games, VR, AR, sports AAA titles. 20% gaming expanded with mobile games, Angry Birds, Candy Crush, making play accessible anywhere. VR, AR introduced impressive and experiences like Oculus and Pokemon Go.
In 1972, Magnavox Odyssey launched the home console market, creating a brand new entertainment in industry. Global milestone. So when we call global milestone is a significant event or achievement with a far-reaching impact on a worldwide scale, influencing societies, economies, technologies, and environment across the globe. This milestone represents substantial advancements, shift in trends, or critical developments recognized internationally and mark important moments in history, shaping the course of human civilization. In 1985, Nintendo Entertainment System (NES) revived the gaming industry, proving its resilience and potential for mainstream success. In 1994, Sony PlayStation ushered in the era of 3D gaming and CD-ROM technology, intensifying competition and driving innovation. 2000 MMORPGs, World of Warcraft, and mobile gaming explosion expanded the gaming audience and revenue streams, transforming the industry into a global phenomenon. And 2010 to 2020s, esports, VR, AR, and anti-game revolution redefined gaming as a spectator sport, pushed the boundaries of immersion, and empowered independent developers.
Good day everyone, let me share about Philippine game development. In the early 20s, the Philippines started with outsourcing for international game companies. That means Filipinos were making art or animation support. For example, Filipino artists created characters or background designs for foreign games. Later on, local studios appeared. The first one was Anino Games in 2001. One of their projects was Anito Defend, A Land and Range, which was one of the first PC games made in the Philippines. As time went by, more indie developers and mobile games started to grow. Example, the simple but popular mobile games made by small teams that many of us play today. There's also an organization called GDAP, or Game Developers Association of the Philippines, which helps and supports local games creators. In summary, Filipinos have a big contribution in animation, programming, and creative design, showing that our talents are now being recognized globally.
Anino Entertainment, a company, created Anito Defend a Land and Bridge, which came out in 2003. Anito is a single-player game that combines elements of adventure and role-playing games. The player will be either play as Aguila, a 20-year-old boy, the son of well-known Datu, and Mga Tiwala, Hunter, or as Maya, Aguila's sister, who is a year younger and has both clairvoyant traits. Unfortunately, Anito did not gain popularity in both local and foreign gamers. Next, Grimwire, the mobile RPGs. One of the most effective tools we have is thought to be math. However, both adults and children despise it. The way it is taught may be the cause of this. In this book, the use of games as a math teaching tool is introduced. Math will be included into a mobile RPG or role-playing game through puzzles and spells. Basic arithmetic and geometry are studied in math classes in grades 4 and 5. To make the game interesting and exciting and engaging, a variety of design, game, psychology principles were used. Let's talk about the game Potion Punch. Monster Nonsense Corporation, a Philippine game developer, created the time management brewing casual game Potion Punch. In 2016, the first game was made available. Noam, an elderly potion maker, is transformed into a gnome at the start of the game due to a supernatural mishap. The player character, a hooded stranger, then entered and chose to assist Noam in managing his potion stores.
In this part, I'll be talking about how video games evolved from lab experiments into global industry. Let's start with the early days. In the 1940s and 1950s, scientists like William Higginbotham and Alan Turing were experimenting with computer technology. They created simple games like Tennis for Two or just to test the capabilities of computers. These early games were basic but became cultural phenomena, and the rise of esports has created new opportunities for professional gamers. The industry is worth billions and still growing.
The references we used are Kent's The Ultimate History of Video Games, Donovan's Replay, The History of Video Games, and the Game Developers Association of the Philippines. Kent's work gives us the foundation of video game history, starting from the simple experiments of the 1950s and 60s, like Tennis for Two and Space War, up to the arcade boom of the 70s, the crash and revival of the 80s, and the rise of console in the 90s. It helps us understand how games grew from small lab projects into a global industry. Donovan's book then expands on this by showing the major milestones that shaped modern gaming. The birth of consoles like Magnavox Odyssey, the rise of Nintendo and PlayStation, the growth of online gaming, and the entry of mobile games, VR, and esports in the 2000s and beyond. And then finally, we connect this history to the Philippines through the GDAP. We see how local developers entered the global market, starting with outsourcing and art support, then moving to original titles. Studios like Anito Games paved the way with Anito, Defend a Land and Rage, while newer developers found success with games like Potion Punch and other indie projects on mobile and Steam. This shows the Philippines is not only part of gaming history, but also contributing to its future. Together, these references trace the journey of video games, from their origins through global achievements and into the growing role of the Philippines in shaping what comes next.